Greetings, family. Welcome back to the channel. To everyone who keeps supporting this platform, thank you. And if you're new here, you are welcome. This is a space for African-centered thinking, historical memory, and honest conversations, even when they are uncomfortable. Today's video is not about hate. It is not about conspiracy. And it's not about attacking any nation or people. It is about power. How power is built, how power is maintained, and why Africa, the richest continent on earth, remains structurally poor. You are about to hear a long clip that makes a very bold argument that Western civilization, as we know it, could not exist without Africa, and that Africa remains deliberately subdued because of that dependency. Listen carefully, not emotionally, but critically.
Europe could not exist and attain the level of development it did without plundering the resources of Africa, both natural and human.
Well, they know that. The West knows that. They're acutely aware of their actual total dependence upon Africa. If Africa manufactured, if they used their own resources, their own minerals, their own materials for their own industries, well, the entire economy of the West would collapse. And with the collapse of their economy, their whole so-called civilization would collapse. Africa is the foundation upon which they built their house. So they know this. And like I said, this is why no matter what else changes in the world, no matter how power dynamics shift in the world, the subjugation of Africa has been maintained for over 800 years. There's literally nothing more important to them than this. They tell you that if you nationalize, then there will be massive capital flight, investors will run away, and so on. Well, think about that for a second. They're trying to scare you with consequences that they themselves will be imposing. They're warning you that if you do something that is in your country's best interest, they will punish you. This is very different from telling you that the policy in and of itself is actually bad. They're telling you that they will make it a bad policy because of what they will do to you if you implement it. You understand? These people are threatening you, and then you're supposed to trust their advice? The advice of these neoliberal predators? You're supposed to listen to them and trust their advice when they are blatantly telling you that they will punish you if you do something to try to make things better, to try to change things? I mean, they couldn't make it more obvious, their malice. They couldn't make their malice more obvious. They couldn't make it any more obvious how against your best interests they are. How much they put their own private interests above the interests of their country. They're openly identifying themselves to you as your enemy. You understand me? I mean, they're not saying that nationalization doesn't work. They're not saying that it isn't beneficial. They're saying that they will do everything in their power to make sure it doesn't work. They're saying that they will sabotage nationalization for their own sake, for the sake of their own profit interests. And still you let this type of people have a say in policy discourse? Well, that's humiliating. They hold you in contempt and they don't even hide it. I mean, for instance, the nationalization of key sectors, such as mining, such as energy and finance. This is essential to try to break the stranglehold of foreign capital on your country, and to ensure that the country's resources are actually used for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of the domestic economy. The countries in the global south, in fact, they're in a position today to actually dictate the terms now. If Westerners want to pull out their capital, so say you nationalize. Okay, if Westerners want to pull out their capital, they want to withdraw their investments, okay, go ahead. Dig around in your own lands for the minerals you need to make your stuff, and good luck to you. And all the global south countries, it's time for them to break away from this paradigm, break away from Western domination and start implementing all of those policies that they know perfectly well will benefit them, whether America likes it or not. I mean, can you imagine if the Gulf countries didn't put their oil sector under government control? Where would they be now? But look at where they are now. Look at the amount of capital they have now. No, this millennium-long system of subjugation needs to come to an end. And it really doesn't matter if the road to liberation is a little bit rocky. I'd rather be traversing a rocky road than be buried under the rubble, which is where the West has kept Africa for centuries. This is the richest and most important continent on the planet. And the West stole your riches and they stole your importance, and they've been an imposter on the throne for far too long. It doesn't make any sense to be afraid of someone whose power is actually dependent upon you. That's a psychological power, not an actual power. They have a psychological power over you. But every element of their real power is completely derived from you yourselves. It's like your hand is on the tap that the hose is attached to that they use to waterboard you. And all you have to do is turn it off.
Here are 4 strategic African countries that the United States and its allies in the West has captured to keep a hold of Africa and keep Africa enslaved. Number 1, Nigeria. Yes, if you control Nigeria, you control the whole of West Africa. Nigeria, of course, they've got a good network of roads from Nigeria to other West African countries. They've got air transport well linked to all the cities in West Africa. And Nigeria militarily is the biggest. You know, Americans have made Nigeria the biggest military deliberately so that they can easily control West Africa, intimidate other countries. That's how they've kept control. And recently, they pampered the Nigerian economy artificially to become Africa's biggest, when it's not true. You cannot have Africa's biggest economy with 13 million people threatened by hunger in 2024. It doesn't happen. You can't hear of hunger in South Africa. I mean, Gauteng alone in South Africa is the biggest economy. You can't compare with any country, but it's just a district in South Africa. So it's not true that Nigeria is the biggest economy. Americans twerk. They brought down the South African economy. Remember what they did with the banks, conniving with the banks to bring down the rand and all that, so that they should lose track when it comes to Standard and Poor credit rating? Yeah, that's America trying to pamper Nigeria. And why did they pamper Nigeria like that? They were trying to hit back at South Africa for joining the BRICS. Yeah, you get it? So, control Nigeria, you control West Africa. And you know, when they pamper these people, they pamper them socially as well. Nigerians feel like they're top dogs in West Africa, you know, and you know, you cannot talk to a Nigerian about Pan-Africanism. Have you heard a Nigerian talking about Pan-Africanism? If there is, very few. But they don't talk Pan-Africanism. You know, they feel like they're top dogs, America is with them and all that. You know, they pamper them socially, deliberately, so that they should have no feelings for any other West African country when it's suffering under the boot of the United States and its allies. And, you know Nigerians with Israel. You know, Israel is their heaven, their promised land. You know, you cannot talk to a Nigerian about genocide in Israel. You know, you can't, because they did a good job of brainwashing Nigerians in that area. Let's not even go there. Country number 2, Egypt. Yes, control Egypt, you control North Africa. All the countries, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Sudan, Ethiopia, they are under Egypt. Egypt is superior militarily, economically, and Egypt is well linked by road, by rail, by air transport, you know, very well linked in North Africa. And as usual, the Americans have pampered the Egyptians to feel that they are most important people in North Africa. So when they hear that this such country, like they did to Libya, devastating that country, the Egyptians were just, oh, well, it's none of our business. We're good with the United States, you know. So they have pampered them economically, socially, so that they should have no feelings for any other. Like they're eating on the same table, but they're not really. They're just another African country that they're exploiting, you know. And that's how the United States plays this game. So you control Egypt, you control North Africa. Third country that the United States and its allies strategically controls on the African continent is Kenya. Kenya is well placed strategically. The rails and road networks from Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, all of them connect to Kenya. And they did that deliberately because they want to get a good grip on East Africa. The United States deliberately made the Kenyan army the strongest army. And that's for a reason. They're sending them into Haiti to keep the peace in Haiti. But in actual fact, They're doing the dirty work for the United States in Haiti. They're doing that in Somalia already. They sent their troops in Somalia on the orders of the United States to keep the peace in Somalia. But they're doing the dirty work there. They're simply trying to make sure that all East African countries are kept in check and the United States keeps its control over the eastern part of Africa. Yes, talk to a Kenyan about Pan-Africanism. How many Kenyans have spoken Pan-Africanism? One guy, Patrice Lumumba, I give it up to him. I give it up to you, sir. But he's a lone star. Kenyans don't share the same sentiments with Patrice Lumumba when it comes to Pan-Africanism. He's like a desert flower. Rose. I don't know what they call those flowers that you just find in the desert, just there, alone in the middle of nowhere. That's Patrice Lumumba. Kenyans have been socially pampered by the Americans to feel superior to everybody in East Africa. There's a reason for that. That's what Americans do best. They pamper you so that you feel nothing for the others who are suffering. Just look at what they've done with our African leaders. They are so rich, they are billionaires, but they are running the poorest countries on earth, and they feel no remorse. Fourth country that the United States and its allies in the West control is South Africa. Yes, if you control South Africa, you control the whole of Southern Africa. South Africa has got a good road network into Africa, rail, air, and if you control the South African economy, you control the whole of Southern African economy. And the United States was very scared when they saw that, oh, these guys, they've gone to BRICS. Oh, these guys have kicked Israel out. But Ramaphosa is paying a big price for that because they are coming hard on him. They want a regime change. In this 2024 election, the ANC has lost its majority in parliament. They've divided the South Africans so good. As usual, the Americans, they have pampered the South Africans to make them feel like they're the most special guys in Southern Africa, and they won't care a thing about Pan-Africanism because the Americans do it best. They'll pamper you to make you feel important and part of them. And South Africans are light-skinned. Maybe they feel like they're closer to the white skin. Maybe. Because they voted for a white party, DA. The party that says in its manifesto that they'll never give the land back to the black people. That's the party that South Africans have voted for to keep it in second place and very, very close to power. But the party that speaks Pan-Africanism like the EFF, they've kicked it so far down to fourth place. And very, very soon, the DA might start ruling South Africa, slow by slow. America wants South Africa back, and they want to punish Ramaphosa. And the Americans are sending a message that if you stand against America and Israel, you're going to pay the price. And this is the message they're sending to Ramaphosa right now. So the Americans are fighting to get South Africa back. This is exactly what is happening. America has gotten hold of the whole of Africa using 4 countries, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South.
Let's start with the central claim of this clip, that Europe and the wider West could not have developed without plundering Africa, both natural resources and human beings. This is not radical. This is not controversial. This is history. Gold, rubber, copper, diamonds, oil, and uranium. And before that, millions of African bodies through slavery. The Industrial Revolution did not happen in a vacuum. It required raw materials, free or cheap labor, and captive markets. Africa provided all three. What makes people uncomfortable is not the history. It's the implication. Because if Africa was foundational to Western wealth, then Africa's poverty is not accidental. The speaker says something extremely important. If Africa manufactured its own resources for its own industries, the Western economy would collapse. Now whether you agree with the absolute phrasing or not, the direction of the argument is correct. Modern Western economies rely heavily on African minerals, African energy resources, African agricultural land, African geopolitical compliance. Yet Africa exports raw materials and imports finished goods. This is not incompetence. This is design. Any system where one side exports value and imports dependency will always remain poor, no matter how hardworking the people are. Now let's talk about the most important section of this clip: nationalization. The speaker explains something many Africans feel but struggle to articulate. When Western institutions warn African countries that nationalization will cause capital flight, investor withdrawal, and sanctions, they are not giving neutral advice. They are issuing a warning that they themselves will enforce punishment. That is not economies. That is cohesion. Notice something very important. They do not say, nationalization does not work. They say, if you do it, we will make sure it doesn't work. That distinction matters because it reveals intent. Here is the contradiction Africa lives with. We are told to trust advice from institutions and powers that openly prioritize their own profit over African survival. They tell African nations, privatize, liberalize, open your markets and reduce government control. Yet when Gulf countries nationalized oil, they were praised as smart. When Norway nationalized energy, they were praised as responsible. When Africa considers it, it is labeled dangerous, unstable, or anti-investment. So the rule is clear. Nationalization is only bad when Africans do it. One of the strongest insights in this clip is psychological control. African fears Western retaliation, but Western power is derived, not absolute. They need African minerals for technology, African oil and gas, African strategic locations, African labor markets. The fear is psychological, built over centuries of domination. As the speaker puts it, Africa's hand is on the tap. Yet Africa believes it has no control over the water. That is not weakness. That is conditioning. Now the speaker identifies 4 countries: Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South Africa. This part is sensitive and we must approach it carefully. This is not about attacking ordinary Nigerians, Egyptians, Kenyans, or South Africans. It is about geopolitical positioning. Each of these countries anchors a region: Nigeria, West Africa; Egypt, North Africa; Kenya, East Africa; South Africa, Southern Africa. Control these hubs and you influence entire regions. As a Kenyan, I cannot skip this part. Kenya is strategically positioned. Our infrastructure connects East Africa. Our military is heavily integrated with Western security frameworks. Our troops are sent to Somalia, now Haiti, always under the banner of peacemaking. But peacemaking for whose interests? We must ask uncomfortable questions. Who decides where Kenyan soldiers go? Who funds and equips those missions? Who benefits geopolitically? This does not mean Kenya is evil. It means Kenya is used. And psychological elevation, being told we are stable, special, key allies, can dull Pan-African solidarity. The speaker urges that regional powers are socially pampered to feel superior to their neighbors. This is an old colonial strategy. Divide Africans vertically and horizontally. Different flags, different currencies, different rankings, different special relationships. As long as Africans compete with each other, they do not confront the system. Pan-Africanism is dangerous not because it is violent, but because it is cooperative. South Africa's recent positioning, BRICS, international legal actions, has consequences. Whether one supports the ANC or not, the backlash is predictable. Global power punishes defiance not immediately, but structurally. Capital pressure, ratings pressure, political fragmentation. This sends a message to the entire continent. Step out of line and pay the price. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Liberation is not clean. It is not fast, and it is not guaranteed to be painless. But permanent submission is far worse. Africa does not lack intelligence. Africa does not lack resources. Africa lacks policy sovereignty. And sovereignty is never given. It is taken, defended, and built over time. The West's greatest fear is not African anger. It is African confidence. But because once Africa believes in its own value, the illusion collapses. You cannot permanently dominate someone whose power comes from themselves. If this video challenged you, good. Growth begins with discomfort. Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Like, subscribe, and support African voices that refuse to be silenced. Thank you for watching. Stay conscious, stay grounded, stay African.